Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Run, Walk, Talk, Tales of Inclusion and Development. My name is Steph, and I'm here with Judy, and her pronouns are she and her, and my pronouns are she and her. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, books we read this summer.
I know, I can't believe that fall is now upon us, and we've been talking about doing a
Mm.
podcast on the books that we've read this past summer, and I know both of us have read quite a few, probably both on the fiction and nonfiction side. And today we're going to stick to nonfiction, and we're going
Hmm.
to really just focus on a couple, and those that are really related to, leadership development and L&D and EDI. And so we can start with you, Steph. What book stuck with you the most? Which one gave you an idea that you're still thinking about, or a quote, or what's got you still thinking about it?
Okay, so my first book is We Want You, an allyship guide for people with power by Julie Kratz. It just came out early August. Yes,
Okay.
it does look like that is Uncle Sam, just,
And it
I
is,
think
right?
that's,
I'm trying
I
to,
think
yeah.
it is. Yeah, I think uh, Julie didn't say anything in the book, but I
Okay.
do, for us here in Canada, we do also recognize the reference.
Yep.
Uh, this book is written for leaders, managers, people who have influence, and really helping them to become better allies in organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think um, her book is practical, so it
Mm-hmm.
really moves beyond the when people say I want to do what I can but I don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
So extremely practical. She
Mm-hmm.
addresses things like sort of these common things around fear, like how to take that fear, because I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes allies feel like they're going to do something wrong or say the wrong thing,
Mm-hmm.
and the reality is they will, and you will fumble and it will be okay you know
Absolutely. It
um
sounds like it's taking some of that fear away so that people feel comfortable tr in doing the right thing, if you will.
that's right. And so what I like about this book, it's practical, gives you very sort of good examples of what to do, addresses a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the myths.
Mm-hmm.
One of the thing though that I noticed is that this book talks a lot also about humility. And I think for leaders, we want to have control of things and
Mm-hmm.
understanding everything and having to kind of let go.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then on the very sort of superficial perspective, I will talk about
Mm-hmm.
this book. It is a beautiful size.
I know
Okay,
you like the
the
it,
si-
it the
I the
fits in your
the size
bag.
the size of
Yeah.
my books are, I'm very
Mm-hmm.
particular.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, how about you?
Well, before I dive into
Yeah.
my first book, I did just want to say that I like that notion of the humility. And we've
Mm-hmm.
talked about this before. No one can know everything. We can't
No.
all be walking around knowing everything, and we're all works in progress, and hopefully works in progress, and people who are trying our best. And it
Yeah.
sounds like the book acknowledges that. And I love that when you mentioned about the humility, because I think
Yeah.
that's key. Well,
Yeah.
Steph, like you, it's hard for me to pick just one, but you've heard me speak about this book. If you can see it on the screen,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
recommend this so frequently to people who are looking for something interesting to get them started in exploring AI and generative AI. It
Mm-hmm.
is Unmasking AI by Joy Bolamwini. And she became familiar to me because she was on the Brene Brown actually podcast speaking
Mm-hmm.
about this book and about her
Mm-hmm.
research. And
Mm-hmm.
what I love is she is a computer scientist by background.
Mm-hmm.
She is also a poet, and so I love
Mm.
that combination of somebody
Yes.
in the arts, computer scientist. She's a researcher. She founded the Algorithmic Justice League, which I just
Mm-hmm.
think is
Yeah.
incredible. And I would just recommend and say read her book. She's done so much, and she uses art throughout the book to really highlight the bias that is in AI and Gen AI.
Hmm.
There's a TED Talk if people want to get familiar with her. I would say listen to the Brene Brown podcast. She also has a documentary that was made that features her
Hmm.
research on as well, and it's called Coded Bias. And so
Hmm.
one of the things that I want to speak about from the book that's really stayed with me is she writes about the coded gaze
Mm.
and really how systems are built and often invisibly with assumptions and blind spots and biases of their creators. And so
Yes.
the premise is technology isn't neutral. And the perspectives and the biases of the coders, and this is true for AI and generative AI and all of the places that it's pulling from, really become embedded in those systems. And it means the technology, she says, reflects those biases back into the world. And so, I mean, I think most of us have heard about this, but
Hmm.
she is such a compelling storyteller and she's so interesting. And so it's just a fascinating book. And one of the examples that she gives, she conducted research called Gender Shades,
Mm.
and she was looking at, how does AI and really AI at that point look at gender classification. And
Hmm.
so she was looking at software by all of the
Hmm.
big names, all of the big tech companies, and she found that their systems, when presented with, photographs of darker skinned women compared to lighter skinned men, there was a bias.
Yeah.
And she says it's not like a small marginal thing, it was large enough to meaningfully impact people. And in fact, some of the research that she does, the camera doesn't even see her until she puts on a white mask. And so one of the questions she poses in her book is, okay, if this is happening to me with this experiment that I'm doing, what is going on out there for all of us, especially now in our environments where we're being identified with by cameras.
Yeah.
And so if a system can't see someone, who is being excluded and where is this occurring? And she really dives into how this isn't something maybe that many people are thinking about on a day-to-day basis. So I think you can tell I would definitely highly recommend this book.
Well, and I've watched the TED Talk. I've seen I think it was on like
Hmm.
Netflix.
Hmm.
I
Oh,
do.
yep.
Yeah, I have to, you know what? I haven't read her book, but she was at like she raised the alarm around this early on. Like
Yes.
she is a pioneer when it
Yeah,
comes to this work.
absolutely she is.
And
Absolutely.
yeah.
And would you agree? Like she's very accessible. She's a researcher. She's got this has very evidence-based,
Yes.
solid research. But it's an interesting read. I think anybody would enjoy reading it.
Very simple in the sense of if you have a certain programmer programming something with their assumptions, of course there is going to be bias.
Yes, yes, yes.
And and from the AI perspective, it's like sometimes I talk to people and say, we need everyone using it. We
Mm-hmm.
need all different lived experience,
Mm-hmm.
sort
Mm-hmm.
of telling the algorithm yes or no when you're asking for images and things like that. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah.
So, was there in your reading this summer any books that you really enjoyed, but you felt, oh, I could have used a little bit more? Maybe there was a topic that was underexplored.
Okay, so I spend a lot of time, obviously, in the equity, diversity, and inclusion space, finding ways to have, what you could consider sort of tough, hard conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So I took out, you can see it's like from the library, How to Have Impossible Conversations, a very practical
Mm-hmm.
guide by Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay. Now, I
Okay.
can't remember when it came out, to be honest. I'm trying to do a quick search to see. Okay, so this was like 2019. Um,
Okay.
Very practical. Again, I have a theme around sort of the how to have these difficult, types of conversations. Again, there is, start with humility,
Mm-hmm.
accept you could be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you know, don't try to sort of challenge people, sort of just take the time to sort of pause and not get reactive.
Mm,
Avoid that sort of judgment piece.
hmm
What what I found was missing, there were a couple things. One, in a
hmm
way, sometimes I felt it was more around persuasion versus mutual understanding. So it almost felt like sometimes when I was reading the examples, was this sort of a like I'm going into negotiation with someone,
A
which
little
when
bit
you're
inauthentic. We're
yeah,
not, yeah.
and when you're having like, and I will say it's like identity conversations. So there's
Hmm
that sort of, we can't, I personally feel like it is not up to me to question your identity. Your identity is your identity and your experiences,
hmm
right?
hmm
And so there was that piece,
Okay.
and it missed that sort of, we didn't get into the nuances around social and cultural nuances, right? Because we work with all different cultures and
hmm
whatnot, and the way that they communicate
hmm hmm
and converse, and get things done. So that I feel like was a missing piece that
Okay.
we could have gone into. And I feel like I think I've talked before about the culture map by Erin Meyer, who
hmm
really goes into that sort of those cultural pieces,
hmm hmm
you know?
So, Steph,
Yeah,
would you recommend this book as long as somebody had another book like the Culture Map to read alongside it, maybe? Like,
totally. I,
okay.
always, because I think we need, given everything going on in the world today, we all need to get better to have uncomfortable conversations,
Mm, hmm
right?
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
know, yeah.
Yeah.
And what about
And I'm
you?
Well, okay. So, and I think this is a book that is either on your list or that you
Oh,
read. And
oh,
the reason I read it is because I know you were planning to read it.
yeah.
So, The Ambition Trap. So,
Oh,
uh,
yes.
it's it's good. I do recommend it, and I'm curious to hear what you think. But I did feel that it's got a strong message, right? That if you have unchecked ambition, it can take you off course, and sort of that notion of we're all so busy all the time, and for what reason, and uh, how purpose is so important and rest is so important. And it reminded me a little bit of other books that I've read that emphasize the
Yeah.
importance of rest and, as I said, purpose. And I think it's really great as an introduction into this area and to this notion
Mm,
of finding purpose. Um, I did feel it didn't always flesh out all of the examples,
mm,
and
mm-hmm.
there is some research in the book, but I guess I would have liked more. And that I really like a framework or some
Yes.
practical nuggets,
Yeah.
and I felt that was lacking. Uh, did you get it?
Yes.
Did you read it? Did you get a
Yeah, I
chance?
did. Yeah, I did read it.
Hmm
And you're right. I definitely think it's sort of an introduction to sort of this ambition and purpose.
hmm
Um, and I've read enough of these types of books where the author has sort of, there's that critical moment, that crisis moment, that health crisis,
hmm
which it started off with in the book of her health crisis,
hmm
and that changes her journey and research and to sort of her focus, right?
hmm hmm
And I I always sort of feel like as humans, I hope we don't need to get to that point of like almost over the edge or having cancer to get us to change, or and the author didn't have cancer, but like these really extreme
Yes. You collapse
situations.
and
That's
suddenly
right.
you
Yes.
are like, wow,
Yeah.
I've pushed myself too far and now I need to make changes.
Yeah.
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 I don't, it, but you're right. It made me think for
hmm
sure. It made me question ambition
hmm
and sort of
hmm
what is maybe that question of what is enough when it comes to ambition, and
Yes.
and who am I being ambitious for?
Right.
Yeah,
and what all is important in my world besides those things that I'm very ambitious about.
that's right.
So, yeah,
That's
questioning
right.
maybe ambition in the workplace, which, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, shifting gears a little bit, of all the books you read, was there a book that challenged your assumptions or really shifted your thinking? Those, light bulb moments, did you have one of those? Or maybe, it's not a specific book, maybe there's a theme that appeared in some of the books that you read that had really shifted your thinking this summer.
So the third book is The Power of Us
Mm-hmm.
by Jay Bevel and Dominique Packer.
Okay.
And this again sort of looked at how our identities are shaped by the groups we belong to. And how
Mm.
does that influence our thoughts and decisions and behaviors?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so for me, it really, again, in a world that I feel like really focuses on individualism and sort of individual traits and choices, this book really kind of showed how when we come together and we focus on a group, that is better than just sort of than the individual.
Mm-hmm.
I will I'll also say that when it comes to sort of understanding conflict, it talks about sort of that polarization piece.
Mm-hmm.
And the book sort of talks about how, again, maybe similar to the other book I read, more about like how to deal with competing identities and maybe
Mm-hmm.
new approaches to trying to kind of understand each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, Charles Duhigg, he on like the top of it, it says a fascinating journey into the science of identity. And so, what I liked about this book too, it has the research, the neuroscience. It
Mm-hmm.
also has some of the similar studies that I'm sure if you like, I really like reading sort of social behavior and human behavior, talking about the one where the experiment where the person is giving a shock to the person in the another room. Have you heard that study?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sort of that feeling of like, getting to that point of what was too much,
Mm-hmm.
and so it talked a bit about that kind of study, which I found again, I've seen it in other ones, but it's a refresher around how we follow group think.
Mm-hmm.
And also
Mm-hmm.
another interesting study is, you're in a group and somebody asks a question and it even could be a math question or whatever, and the answer is 10, which is very simple. But the other people who are part of the experiment give other answers. And then it comes to you. And do you say 10 or do
Mm-hmm.
you think like, oh, everybody else is saying
I must be
12?
wrong. Yeah. Or I just need
Everybody's
to fit
saying
in.
that's right. And how we
Mm-hmm.
really have a strong connection to wanting to
To
fit
fit
in
in.
and how
Yeah.
hard it is to stand out. So,
Yeah. Oh,
what
that
about
sounds like a great
you?
read.
I
Well,
know, got to read it.
so my third book, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it other than to sort of connect it to the other books that I've mentioned, but this is one that was sitting on my bookshelf for a couple years, and I finally got into it, called Time Smart.
Oh,
And
okay.
what I like about it is it speaks about how money is actually less important than our time. If we're
Oh,
and it challenges that notion of we do these task lists and how can we be more efficient. And what we really need to be thinking about is how do we plan our time so that we get the most purpose and out of our time. The
yeah.
subtitle is How to Reclaim Your Time and Live a Happier Life. She speaks about, it's by Ashley Willens, and she speaks
Mm,
about if you can afford it, because not everybody can, but looking at your time and looking at tasks that are really taking a lot of your time. And if you can outsource those personal tasks, do it, which I love,
mhm.
because time is really when, when it all comes down to the end of our lives for each of us, it's time that would wish we had more of.
That's right.
Um, and it sounds like a premise maybe that we've heard about before, but again, I love it because she gives practical examples and she also, it's very research and evidence based. So, with respect to the three books that I've spoken of, whether it's, AI to the ambition to managing your time, I think they all touch on, how do we start making choices that are people focused, purpose
Mhm.
focused,
Mhm.
um, and so that really has been sticking with me, and I've been thinking about that a lot. Um, I've got a question for you. If you could
Mhm.
pick one author out of all the books that you read this past summer and ask them what question, who would the author be and what would the question be?
I I would ask Julie in
Hmm.
the We Want You. I would be curious to understand what is the biggest misconception power holders have about allyship.
Mm, mm, mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you? What would you ask and
Well,
who?
yeah, it would be joy.
I,
And
if you hadn't said Joy, I'd be like, can I ask
like,
a
what's going
question for
on?
Joy?
Yeah. So, and similar, like to you posing a leadership question, like I would be asking, what's the most effective way to help leaders
Hmm.
recognize those invisible biases in the
Yeah,
technology, but also in their decision making that may come from um, the systems in which we find ourselves in. So, yeah, that would
that's
be my
right.
question for her.
That's right. Uh, wow. That was so good. Thanks so much, Judy, for having that conversation.
Thank you.
I've got some books that I will probably read or need to borrow from you.
Me too.
Uh, Thanks, everybody. Until next time.